Fastest knockout. It was July 6, 2019. UFC 239 was supposed to be another chapter in the UFC's long line of electrifying fight nights. But no one, and I mean no one, could have predicted what would happen when Jorge Masvidal stepped into the octagon against Ben Askren. From the moment the bell rang, everything changed. Askren, a former Olympic wrestler, was known for his ability to smother his opponents, but he never saw Masvidal's plan coming. Masvidal, the Miami native with a street fighting reputation, had no intention of waiting around. As soon as the fight started, he sprinted across the cage, flying knee to the face, and just like that, the fight was over. 5 seconds. That's all it took. Askren, whose record was unbeaten up to that point, hit the mat before he could even blink, his head snapping back from the impact. Fans in the arena were on their feet in stunned silence. The commentators were left stumbling over their words, struggling to process what had just unfolded. Longest title reign in UFC history. Anderson Silva wasn't just a champion, he was the champion. When he took the middleweight belt at UFC 64 in 2006, no one knew they were witnessing the beginning of the most dominant reign the UFC had ever seen. What followed was a near 7-year stretch that would set the record for the longest title reign in UFC history. 2,457 days, to be exact. That's over 6 years of absolute dominance in a division stacked with killers. Silva's reign was defined by a cocktail of lethal precision, unorthodox striking, and an almost effortless air of superiority. He didn't just win his fights, he made his opponents look silly. Whether it was a flawless knockout, a showy front kick to the face, or a submission out of nowhere, Silva had an uncanny ability to do what he wanted, when he wanted. It was a game of chess, and Silva was always 10 steps ahead. But the thing about a reign that long is there are always going to be challengers. Silva faced legends like Rich Franklin, Dan Henderson, and Chael Sonnen, all of whom brought their A game, but none of them had the answers. The real shocker came when Silva almost lost his title to Chael Sonnen in their first bout in 2010. 4.5 rounds, Silva looked human for the first time. But with one spectacular triangle armbar in the 5th round, Silva snatched victory from the jaws of defeat and reminded everyone why he was untouchable. When Silva finally lost to Chris Weidman in 2013, his reign came to an end, but his legacy was sealed. For nearly 7 years, Silva wasn't just a fighter, he was a force of nature, a once-in-a-generation athlete who changed the game forever. Most successful title defenses. When Georges St-Pierre stepped into the octagon, the entire welterweight division knew this guy wasn't here to play. When he won the UFC welterweight title in 2006, it was clear he wasn't just another champ. GSP wasn't going to defend the belt once or twice. He was going to defend it 9 times, the most in UFC welterweight history. That streak made him a living legend. But what made his title defensive so impressive wasn't just the wins. It was the level of competition. GSP just didn't face any random challengers. He faced the absolute best, Matt Hughes, BJ Penn, Nick Diaz, and others. And every time, he found a way to shut them down. He wasn't the flashiest fighter, but he was a master of control. Whether he was outstriking his opponents or grinding them out on the ground with his impeccable wrestling, GSP made sure his defense of the title was as systematic as it was flawless. The guy never took a break. When he wasn't defending the title, he was quietly refining his game. Cardio, technique, and discipline were the pillars of his reign. In the face of fierce competition, GSP's ability to evolve and adapt set him apart. Take his fight against Josh Koscheck, for example. GSP's game plan wasn't to make it a slugfest. Nah, he used his jab to neutralize Koscheck's wrestling and dominate the fight. That's the intelligence behind GSP's reign. Most fights in UFC history. Jim Miller has fought everyone. Literally. From the old guard to the new wave, if you name a UFC era, Miller's been in it. He made his debut back in 2008, and by 2025, he's crossed 44 fights inside the octagon, the most in UFC history. No fighter's shown up more often, and few have lasted this long. It's not just quantity. Miller's faced killers. Charles Oliveira, Dustin Poirier, Donald Cerrone, Dan Hooker. He's won with submissions, knockouts, decisions, and grit. Even Lyme disease didn't stop him. Kept training, kept showing up, kept signing the contract. While most fighters burn out or fade away, Miller evolved, from bloody brawls in the early 2010s to technique-heavy wars later on. He adapted through the Reebok era, the Venom deal, the ESPN shift, and 3 different presidents. He doesn't chase highlights, he doesn't need call-outs, just give him a name and a date and he's in. The craziest part, he's still going. UFC 300, he fought there too. 3rd decade in the game, still adding to the stat sheet. When they talk about fighters who've done it all, Jim Miller doesn't talk. He just hands over the record book. Youngest champion in UFC history. John Jones didn't rise through the ranks, he kicked the door in. UFC 128, 2011. At just 23 years old, he ran through Shogun Rua to become the youngest champion in UFC history. A spinning elbow here, a flying knee there, and Rua was getting dismantled by a kid who looked like he'd been built in a lab. The lead-up was pure madness. Days before the title shot, Jones helped stop a mugging in New Jersey. Then 48 hours later, he walked into the cage and beat the brakes off a former Pride legend. He didn't just win, he made it look like a mismatch. Rua had no answers. Jones landed 87 strikes, took him down twice, and finished him in the third round with a barrage of knees and punches. At 23, he was already longer, faster, smarter, using his 84.5-inch reach like a whip. Elbows from weird angles, takedowns from halfway across the cage. That win kicked off a title run that redefined the light heavyweight division. Most submissions in UFC history. Charles Oliveira was once seen as a wild card, the fighter who had all the potential but couldn't quite put it together. Fast forward to 2021, and Oliveira isn't just a UFC fighter. He's the record holder for the most submissions in UFC history with an incredible 16 finishes. His journey from being an overlooked prospect to the UFC's most dangerous submission artist is a testament to the evolution of a fighter. From the start, Oliveira was never one to play it safe. His grappling was ferocious, not the kind of slow, methodical submission attempts you see in most fighters, but lightning-fast transitions, unpredictable chokes, and limbs contorting in ways that made you wonder how his opponents weren't tapping out in sheer disbelief. He didn't just wait for the fight to come to him, he invited his opponents into the fire, knowing full well he could end the fight in an instant. His biggest breakthrough came when he submitted Kevin Lee in 2020, but it wasn't just any submission. It was a rear-naked choke that left Lee no room to escape. That submission proved to the UFC world that Oliveira wasn't just a flashy submission artist. He was a technician, capable of turning any position into a potential tap-out. But Oliveira didn't stop there. Each fight he had in the UFC seemed to be another chapter in his incredible submission saga. Whether it was against Tony Ferguson, Michael Chandler, or anyone in between, Oliveira had one mission: finish the fight. And finish it he did, breaking his own record time and time again. Most wins in UFC history. Donald Cowboy Cerrone is a fighter who doesn't need a spotlight to shine. From the moment he stepped into the UFC in 2006, he became the embodiment of what it means to be a true MMA warrior. Relentless, gritty, and always ready to fight. While most fighters aim to be selective with their opponents, Cerrone was the opposite. He took on anyone, anytime, anywhere. This mindset led him to claim the record for the most wins in UFC history with an astonishing 23 victories. His career wasn't about padding his record with easy wins. No, he made his name by stepping into the octagon against some of the best in the sport, fighting regularly and making it look easy. Whether it was a headliner or on short notice, he was the first to raise his hand when the UFC called. It was his very willingness to fight at a moment's notice that made him a fan favorite and an iconic figure in the sport. Some of his most iconic victories include his impressive performances against fighters like Edson Barboza, Rafael dos Anjos, and Rick Story, fights where Cerrone showcased everything from his elite striking to his jiu-jitsu skills. But it wasn't just his skill set that made him special. It was his heart and fighting spirit. Whether you won or lost, his fights were never boring. They were full of action, determination, and the kind of raw toughness that made you believe he could never be counted out. Fastest knockout in UFC women's bantamweight history. When the lights of UFC 175 flickered on July 5, 2014, no one could have predicted that the night would be defined by a 16-second explosion of chaos. Ronda Rousey wasn't just stepping into the octagon for a victory. She was about to obliterate any and all expectations. The bell rang and it was all over before the crowd could even settle. Davis barely had a moment to breathe before Rousey charged in like a woman on a mission and threw a picture-perfect knee to the body. Before anyone could even process what had happened, Rousey was following up with a clean punch that sent Davis to the canvas. It was razor-sharp and precise, a clear signal that Rousey's striking had transcended her judo and submission roots. The entire arena went silent in shock, the kind of silence that happens when something utterly unexpected takes place. Rousey didn't just win, she set a new bar. The knockout was so quick, so flawless that it made fans and analysts alike question, is there anything she can't do? Most knockouts in UFC history. Derek Lewis doesn't play chess. He throws sledgehammers. As of 2025, he holds the record for the most knockouts in UFC history. 14 clean finishes, each one nastier than the last. He doesn't move like a heavyweight with knockout power. He lulls you in, hands low, breathing heavy, and then boom! One right hand and lights out. Ask Curtis Blades, who shot for a takedown and woke up staring at the ceiling. Ask Alexander Volkov, who was 11 seconds from winning before Lewis launched a bomb and flipped the whole fight. His fighting style is chaos and slow motion. He's never in a hurry until he is. And when he throws, people fall. What makes Lewis stand out isn't just the violence, it's the personality. Post-fight interviews, instant classics. My balls was hot. I'm going to sit my black ass down. The guy finishes fights and breaks the mic. He's knocked out legends, contenders, prospects, everyone. Whether it's elbows, fists, or just pure heavyweight panic, Derek Lewis leaves a trail of bodies. Most knockouts in UFC welterweight division. Matt the Immortal Brown earned his nickname for a reason. He's a living, breathing embodiment of durability and devastation in the octagon. When it comes to pure knockout power, few fighters in the UFC have struck fear into their opponents like Brown has in the welterweight division. With 13 knockouts, Brown holds the record for the most in UFC welterweight history, and the way he achieved it is nothing short of legendary. What made Brown's knockout so terrifying wasn't just his power, it was his ability to land those strikes in the most unpredictable moments. The man had a chin made of granite, and when he hit, he didn't just hurt you, he obliterated you. Whether it was his brutal elbows, savage punches, or lightning-fast knees, Brown was a human wrecking ball. And his fighting style? Unrelenting aggression. He didn't stand around waiting for the perfect moment. He created the perfect moment with his constant pressure. One of his most iconic knockouts came against Mike Swick at UFC on Fox 5. After a relentless barrage of strikes, Brown finished the fight with a vicious uppercut that sent Swick crashing to the canvas. The crowd erupted as Brown's knockout streak continued, cementing his place as one of the most feared strikers in the welterweight division. Fastest title fight KO in UFC history. December 12, 2015, UFC 194. The crowd was electric, the feud was boiling, and Jose Aldo was stepping into the cage after a year of trash talk, media tours, and mental warfare. What followed was over in 13 seconds. Conor McGregor didn't wait. As soon as the bell rang, he slid forward, bounced once, and threw a left hand that shut the lights off. Aldo lunged in with a right, got clipped on the way in, and hit the canvas flat. The fight was waved off before anyone in the arena even processed what had happened. 13 seconds. Fastest title fight knockout in UFC history. Aldo had been undefeated for 10 years. Never knocked out, never even touched like that. McGregor made it look easy. One punch, one belt, one record. Most significant strikes landed in UFC history. When you're talking about landing the most significant strikes in UFC history, it's not just about throwing punches. It's about landing them with accuracy, speed, and most importantly, nonstop pressure. With 3,818 significant strikes, Max Holloway didn't just break the record. He redefined what it means to dominate in a striking battle. His rise to the top of the UFC featherweight division wasn't just about one-punch power. It was about overwhelming opponents with a pace and pressure that made them wilt under the heat. His ability to control the tempo of a fight and keep opponents on the back foot is what set him apart from the competition. His style is often referred to as volume striking, and it's not hard to see why. He'll pepper you with jabs, hooks, uppercuts, and everything in between, until you're so tired from trying to avoid his strikes that the inevitable finish feels like a weight lifted off your shoulders. The most iconic moment that encapsulates Holloway's striking dominance was his fight with Calvin Kattar at UFC on ABC 1. Holloway threw 447 significant strikes, an absurd number by any standard, and made it look effortless. The fact that Kattar, a skilled striker himself, couldn't stop Holloway's onslaught was a testament to the sheer volume and skill that Max brings to every fight. Most consecutive title defenses in UFC heavyweight division. Stipe Miocic is a name synonymous with grit and resilience. When he stepped into the UFC's heavyweight division, it was clear. This wasn't just a big man with knockout power. No, Miocic was about to redefine what it means to be a champion. His reign as UFC heavyweight champion wasn't just about holding the belt. It was about defending it again and again. With 3 consecutive title defenses, Miocic set the record for the most in UFC heavyweight history, cementing his legacy as one of the sport's most durable and calculated champions. What made Miocic's title reign so special wasn't just his ability to land devastating punches. It was his mental fortitude. Whether it was against Junior Dos Santos, Alistair Overeem, or Francis Ngannou, Miocic showed he wasn't just in the business of winning. He was in the business of proving that he was the best in a division known for its wild unpredictability. Take his first fight against Ngannou at UFC 220, where Miocic faced one of the most feared knockout artists the division has ever seen. Ngannou was on a tear, knocking out opponents in brutal fashion. But Miocic, ever the tactician, didn't just engage in a slugfest. He used his wrestling, his cardio, and his experience to take the fight into deeper waters and grind out a dominant decision victory. His ability to adapt on the fly set him apart. Every time he stepped into the octagon, he wasn't just defending his title, He was adjusting his strategy to take down a new dangerous challenger. Longest win streak in UFC history. Anderson Silva again. Well, this guy didn't fight opponents, he dismantled them. He not only had the longest title reign in UFC history, but from 2006 to 2012, Silva went on a 16-fight win streak, the longest in UFC history, and it wasn't close. He made world-class fighters look like they'd wandered into the wrong sport. Rich Franklin got folded by knees in the clinch. Vitor Belfort got front-kicked into a meme. Forrest Griffin charged in and got slapped like it was sparring day at a kung fu dojo. Every Silva fight felt like a highlight reel waiting to happen. But the streak wasn't just dominance, it was mind games. Silva would drop his hands, lean back, and dare opponents to miss. They did. Then he'd tag them clean and then walk away like nothing happened. His biggest test, though, was Chael Sonnen in 2010. Sonnen smashed him for 4 rounds straight, but in round 5, Silva pulled off a triangle choke from the bottom and kept the streak alive, right when it looked done. For 6 straight years, he owned the middleweight division, 6 title defenses, then 7, then more. The longer it went, the heavier the pressure. But Silva didn't break. He danced, he styled, and he won again and again, until Chris Weidman finally stopped the run in 2013. So, with records like these, who do you think will be the next fighter to leave their mark in UFC history? Could it be a knockout artist, a submission master, or someone we haven't even thought of yet? Drop your thoughts below, and let's see who you think will break the next big record. Don't forget to leave a like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell for more videos like this.